All together now. Isn't that a fantastic phrase? Don't you wonder what you're supposed to be doing all together now? Well, that's the inspiring name of the Shaw Festival Capital Campaign. And today you're going to learn about that amazing campaign from the two people who can really tell you.
Welcome to All About Capital Campaigns, a podcast that provides fuel for your nonprofit's growth. Each week, Amy Eisenstein and Andrea Kihlstedt, co-founders of Capital Campaign Pro, provide practical tips about raising more money for your nonprofit organization. Here are your hosts, Amy and Andrea.
I'm Andrea Kihlstedt, co-founder of Capital Campaign Pro. My partner, Amy Eisenstein, is off this week, and I have a special honor of talking to Cindy Mewhinney and Richard Quinn about the Shaw Festival campaign. Cindy is the Director of Advancement at the Shaw Festival, and Richard is the Senior Advisor for Capital Campaign Pro, who's working with Cindy and the Shaw Festival campaign. So greetings to you both. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Great to be with you, Andrea.
So, Cindy, let's start with you. Tell us a little about the Shaw Festival. You're in Canada. People listening may not know about the Shaw Festival. And a little background. And how about some background to the campaign?
That sounds great. Well, we are a theater company that's located in Niagara-on-the-Lake, which is right on the border between Buffalo and Niagara Falls area, sort of more commonly known in that area. And we are one of the few remaining repertory theater companies in North America. In fact, we're, I believe now, the second largest, second to Stratford, who is the other one just a couple hours away from here. And what makes repertory theater really special is the idea that you have a core ensemble of actors who are performing in multiple plays at the same time. So during our regular season, which runs from about April until October, you can come and visit Niagara-on-the-Lake. You can stay here for anywhere from, a couple days to a week, and you can see between 9 and 11 plays during that time period. And you might see one actor in the same stages will switch over the plays between the afternoon until the evening. So we have a very large ensemble that's here. We have about 600 staff between the artists, the artisans, and our administration teams that work. And we have a holiday season as well. So really, we're almost year-round at this point in time. And it's a chance to really immerse yourself into theater and into what has become a very significant destination for enjoying all things in Niagara: wine, food, restaurants, hotels, and amazing theater. So that's sort of where we're located and what we're about.
Sounds fantastic, Cindy. I got to say, I'm tempted to plan a trip up with my husband.
We'd love to have you. We'd love to have you. The other part that's really interesting is because of the nature of who we are and our size and how we work, so much is created right on site. All the costumes, all the, as opposed to a touring company, the actual plays are made from concept of, even sometimes where you are taking a play and you're adapting it from a book into making it into a script. And then from there, your design teams come up with what the stage, the set, the costumes, everything's designed from scratch here. So as a result, when people come to visit, we can give them the opportunity to see behind the scenes on how everything is made. You can go visit the wardrobe. You can go see how that's done. You can, and we're expanding into more of this area of learn the craft, get involved, get immersed in the workshops and everything else where you can learn the dances, the choreography they're doing on stage, the dialect of how you speak in that particular language. There's so much to learn behind the scenes that adds a lot of value to the experience of watching it in the theater.
That's fantastic. And Cindy, now you're in the middle, or actually heading towards the end of this big capital campaign. Or tell us about it.
Yes. So it's interesting. Are you in the middle? Are you in the beginning? Are you in the end? We're in a new phase of the process. We've just launched publicly our All.Together.Now campaign. And this started off initially as it started off on the basis that we knew one of our theaters needed to be rebuilt, the iconic Royal George Theater, which is right in the downtown area. And one of the things about rebuilding that theater, it was never meant to last as long as it had. And we've put it off and mitigated it to the point where, you're spending so much just to solve for the flooding and all the other issues that happen every year. You just need to rebuild. And when we started to look at the idea of rebuilding the theater, we did a feasibility test with our donor base. And it was really interesting because they came back and told us that's great, but what else? They were looking for more. They were looking for a little more but where are we headed next as an organization? So we went back to the drawing board. And at the same time as we were going back to the drawing board, another property adjacent to us had become available. It was a seniors' home that was being decommissioned. And suddenly the vision of what the future of the Shaw would be got much bigger. And it got much more exciting when we started to think about other ways we could grow and expand, both with our programming, in addition to enhancing our facilities to do that. So the All.Together.Now campaign became more than just, renovating buildings. It became very much this idea of how we could be more of a festival in nature. You could come here and you could experience things above and beyond just seeing the plays. You would linger a little bit longer in town. And even more than that, we started to really lean into our charitable purpose as a theater, which was, what is the greater good that we can bring to society as a whole? There are all these skills that you can benefit from having theater in your life, whether it's learning to be a better communicator, whether it's inspiring your inner artist and evoking your own creativity, or whether it's how it can really help with health outcomes, because we know that the more art you have in your life, it really can help with things like our mental health. It can reduce isolation. There are all of these other societal, social impact components that we felt we had a role to play, and we could play an even bigger role in that way we could give back to society. So All.Together.Now became more than just a capital campaign. It became the start of what we saw our role in being a movement to helping give the arts a greater place in society to contribute to better health outcomes, but also just a more enriched life.
That's fantastic. How big is your campaign? Is that where you started in size? And
No, it evolved over time. And that was kind of a really fascinating point in the journey for us. So there was a moment where it was going to be just the Royal George being rebuilt. And I seem to remember that was about a $50 million estimate at the time. And where we've landed now that we've gone public is we've announced $150 million. And that's because it expanded. The dream got bigger. The vision got bigger. We got this other site adjacent to where we are that's going to be artist housing and a whole new facility for wardrobe and a whole center for, the Burton Center for Lifelong Creativity. That will be the central hub of that facility that can allow us to do a lot more outreach for students and seniors. So you can just imagine that the campaign where it started to where by the time we're going public, it's tripled in size. And it's grown a lot of momentum and excitement as it's gone along.
Richard, you've been an advisor to this process, this mushrooming campaign process. What's that been like for you?
Well, it's been a true privilege, of course, to work alongside Cindy and Tim and TC and John and the Major Gifts team. I started working with Cindy and the team in the summer of 2021. As Cindy had mentioned, they had completed their feasibility study and they tested the goal and they were well positioned to get started. And it's been an extraordinary journey, as Cindy had mentioned. And I just wanted to mention that when I first began working with Cindy, this campaign had several unknowns that were pretty big, actually, when you think about it, right? Cindy had mentioned this facility that could potentially become ours. It wasn't secure yet. We didn't get it. We didn't get it for a while within the campaign. The provincial government grant was sort of, in process being negotiated, but it was not secure yet. The Royal George was something that absolutely had to get renovated for all the reasons which Cindy recommended, but it had not been tested with the Niagara on the Lake community, right? Whenever you do a construction project, you got neighbors to have conversations with, and that was really important. So this was a moment in which we had to make ambiguity our friend. And we could do that because we truly had trusted leadership, right? Tim and TC. Tim is the executive director, TC, or Tim Carroll is the artistic director, were extraordinarily beloved, are extraordinarily beloved. And this campaign would not have been the success that it was. And we couldn't have been able to navigate that ambiguity if it weren't for Tim and TC's and certainly Cindy's leadership throughout it. It gave them really an opportunity to inspire not only volunteer leaders as part of the campaign committee, but also early stage donors, right? So it was really a strategic decision to help the team get comfortable in the ambiguous space and make it work for them. It was a right-headed strategy from the start.
Yeah, fascinating. I'm interested in knowing how the board felt about this expansion, this campaign expansion, right? How much anxiety was there? Richard and Cindy both, what were your roles in that? Richard, did you work with the board? Cindy, do you have access to the board? How nervous were they? Cindy, why don't you begin?
Well, I would say we have an amazing board. Actually, we have 4 boards, if I could say that, and each one kind of serves a different function. But we have an amazing set of board members who they're along for the ride the whole way. So it wasn't like anything moved forward without their input, their consultation. I mean, the whole campaign came out of a board strategic planning process. So when we talk about, originally we were calling it Festival 360 because that was actually what the board's strategic plan was. And then the campaign became sort of the realization of that strategic plan. So in the same way that you would involve the board the whole way through in adopting a strategic plan, they were bought in whole way through. It just wouldn't have worked without that level of involvement. And it took a long time. And of course, your board members are changing over. So then you're bringing into the fold new members, and you have to remember that they don't necessarily have the depth of how did we get to where we are now. So you have to make sure you're bringing them along for the ride too. But that's half the fun. Honestly, like we are so fortunate to have the team of people that we do, but our board has amazing champions. We have people who are not afraid to ask difficult questions. The level of board participation in this campaign is essentially what became the hallmark of our quiet phase. So they were on side, and they were very much part of the process the whole way through.
Richard, did you meet with the board? Were you did you have board interactions, and how do you see that?
Some board interaction, but particularly those who served on the campaign committee. So I attended all campaign committee meetings with Cindy, and Cindy and I would, in the early stages, prepare the agendas together, and so I really got to know the board. And I've also been up to Shaw a couple of times. I've had the privilege of visiting and meeting with a number of the board members and really getting to know them, and that has been kind of helpful as well. Getting to know the space has been very inspiring to me, and it's helped me be even, I think, more effective in my role.
I remember the particular moment. It was in December of 2021, and it was when we brought forward, this is the campaign we want to launch, and this is what it looks like. And Richard was in that room with us, and it was a very in-depth presentation that we gave to the board. And it was, I remember the feeling in the room in that moment. Certainly they were looking to Richard as sort of that external voice and solid opinion, saying, no, you've got this, you've got the base. It's not really so much a leap of faith when it's grounded in the fact that you've done the due diligence to get here. You've got a solid idea, and we can do this. And I remember that moment coming out of that meeting, and that was the board actually passed a motion and said, yes, we're going to do this. And that became the moment when everything started.
That's fantastic. It's so interesting. We see this over and over again, that having an outside voice sometimes gives confidence, right, in a way that inside voices don't. So it's one of the roles that we at Capital Campaign Pro play, that our advisors play, is that we say, we've seen this, we know how campaigns work, and we believe that you can do this. And that sort of outside tap of authority, I think, is often helpful. Let's talk nuts and bolts, dollars and cents. So how much money have you raised to date, Cindy, and how much more do you have to go?
So with the goal being 150, we've just gone public. So we held off going public until we could get to our 70%. So we're just over 110. And we've launched publicly just within the past couple of weeks. We've got another 40 to go. Within that 40, we are hopeful that there is some additional federal government funding that may follow. We've just finished going through an election here in Canada, so it's changed our timeline a little bit on the expectations around when we hopefully might receive that second part. We did receive an initial first part for the Artist Village, looking for the federal portion, hopefully for the Royal George rebuild to come in line with sort of matching what we got from the province. But we have another 20 million in private sources to raise, and that would be on the cash side. And then at the same time, our campaign has this really beautiful legacy giving component. So we're doing a lot of work to have donors think about their legacy giving and their commitments. And that's an additional amount over and above the 20 million that we need to still raise to get to the 1.
Have you been having conversations with donors where you talk about both cash gifts and legacy gifts?
Every single time. Every single time. It is part of the campaign. I mean, it's baked into the thinking. This view of what this campaign is about securing the future of the festival. So it almost doesn't make sense not to talk about it. And it's a beautiful moment to plant the seed of the idea for people who haven't thought about it. It's a great chance to open the conversation for those who have and maybe haven't let us know that they've made that commitment already. And some people, it's encouraged them to think bigger about what their legacy gift is. And we've looked at donor recognition as a combination of future gifts that will come down the road combined with cash components. So we've tried to approach it that way to really blend the legacy component in as an important part of, we're going to build these buildings, we're going to, launch these new programs, but we're also going to build an endowment for the future to sustain what we need to keep going. And it really resonates with people. We've raised, I think, close to 30 million already in legacy gifts through this campaign in commitments. And there's more to come. We're just literally getting started. So it's for me personally, that is the goal. We haven't missed the moment to have those important conversations, knowing so many of these donors have been with us for 10, 15, 20 years coming to the Shaw. It's part of their life. And it's the biggest compliment they can give us by including us in their estate plans.
Yeah.
There was a magic to that, if I can add, there was a magic to that decision to incorporate legacy into the campaign, because I remember Cindy in the early conversations they were having with donors. These were the first conversations that they've had with anybody about considering a legacy gift. And they were thanking us for the opportunity to have that conversation. So it was a real moment of education for these folks as well. And I loved that sort of coming together of energy where the need to sustain what we're dreaming about through this campaign, and the donors' need opportunity to make a gift that can help sustain that vision was a wonderful intersection to witness at that particular moment.
Yeah, that's a terrific story. I'm wondering about surprise gifts. Right, I'm sure that to raise as much money as you've raised, right, as it raised $110 million, you have had some very big gifts, and some of them may have been surprising to you. I wonder if there are one or two that really stand out as donor stories.
Well, what I can maybe share is early on when we were in the quiet phase, and Richard, you'll remember this, we started to put together a list of what we called our long shots. I can't even remember where that term came from, but it was the idea of we could see the connective tissue that these individuals or these organizations there's a value alignment there, or there's an interest alignment, but we don't really know them yet. So the odds of us being able to quickly cultivate a large gift from them, even though we knew they had the capacity to do a large gift, it was an interesting proposition. So we had a few names on that list, probably about 20 in total. When I sit and look back now, none of these things ever happen just overnight, right? These are years in the making. But even on this long shot list, several of them, like one of our lead donors, really had never given to the Shaw until just a few years ago, and suddenly is now making, a very sizable $5 million gift to the campaign. And just to look at how quickly relationships can grow when there's an opportunity and an investment of time to see if there's a good fit. And when there's a good fit, it can grow quickly. So that relationship started with, I'll call it a test gift. No one really does a test gift at $500,000, but the first gift that they gave us was $500,000, and it was all about capacity building for our team. So adding some staffing roles here to help us with our internal capacity, knowing we were heading in this direction. And that was sort of the first couple of years while we were still quiet phase. That wasn't even a campaign gift, that was operational. And then once that term of that short-term gift had finished, they were so excited. They were very invested in the big idea of where this was going and what that could do to the future of what this could be for the town. And next thing you know, they're in with a $5 million gift for our artist village. And in fact, is now our naming sponsor on our Burton Center for Lifelong Creativity. That's a relatively new relationship to the Shaw that emerged over a relatively short period of time.
That long shot process that we went through, and we put together a number of folks that could fit that description. I want to sort of highlight how Cindy described that. She immediately went, it wasn't just let's go after them because they're wealthy and they can make big gifts, but she looked at it through the perspective of how can we make a connection between what we do and their interests, right? It wasn't a blind long shot list. It was a strategic long shot list right from the start. And I think that largely is why we were able to welcome some of those long shots as campaign donors as a result.
And board members were very instrumental in helping make those connections and build those relationships.
Isn't that fantastic to see how generous people can be?
It's amazing.
It's the wonder of this business.
The biggest surprises for me have been the incredible legacy gift commitments that have come from donors who would not normally give at that size and scale. It's so incredibly heartwarming. And it's exciting to talk about what matters to them. And even in like a conversation with someone I was having earlier this week, for them, even though they've known for a while they wanted to do something significant on the legacy side, feeling more connected into this campaign now, they're doing a cash portion and the legacy gift. They are feeling so fantastic that they get to be part of what will be in a way and on a scale that they probably never imagined that they could. So you can just sort of see them light up in them being able to participate in a way that they probably thought, oh, I won't have any idea what my gift will be used for down the road.
Yeah, it's exciting. Now you're in the public phase of your campaign. And rather than just going out for relatively few very big gifts, you're broadening your reach, right? You're spreading your arms. You're spreading the arms of the entire festival. And of course, you have many, many people in this season coming to your campus, coming to your place. How do you think about doing the public phase of your campaign?
It's a complicated one. And the reason I say that is I don't know if you're ever perfectly ready to launch or go public. At least that's my sense about how we feel about it. I don't know, Richard, if you would agree that no one ever really feels 100% ready. There's things you wish you had time to queue up or line up better. But here we are. We're launched. So we're still in that mode as most of the campaign has been, which is you're figuring it out as you go. You're adapting as you go. So for us right now, we've decided that our initial time in this public phase is focused on our mid-level donors. So for us, that's our sort of our governor's council is really trying to reach out, bring them into the circle a little closer in the same way we always do, is just sort of bringing people in closer in, for those who are already connected to us. So we'll work on those asks throughout the summer. As we move more into the fall, we'll look at going to more of our membership level base. So these would be our donors who are $1,000 or less on an annual basis. We'll look at how we can build out more of our direct mail component around that particular segment. And we'll do town halls. We'll make ourselves available when people are putting their hand up and saying, I'm interested in finding out more. We have a lot of channels to make sure that, I don't know, I guess my philosophy is I want to run with the current. If someone's putting their hand up and saying, I'm interested, we're going to prioritize the time in that direction. And then we're going to just continue to use our volunteers to help us with the important one-to-one visits that need to happen, and just really try and make sure that everyone feels they have a chance to ask questions, to learn more, and to feel part of this ride that has just taken off. And in a lot of cases, they're only finding out about some of these pieces just now. We've been at it for years, but in some ways for the public, they're only kind of hearing about the components of what this exciting vision is now.
Yeah, it's funny that, from the campaign point of view, this public phase of your campaign is where the All.Together.Now really takes shape, right?
Absolutely.
It makes sense from a mission point of view, but from a campaign point of view.
Yeah. And we're using our public launch to really talk about the bigger idea. I mean, as much as I talk about the fact that we've got these buildings and these programs, and that's how we're giving life to this vision. But the bigger idea is really that, we need to put down our devices. We need to find ways to be in a room together and have conversations where we can share different points of view and be okay with the fact that we can agree to disagree, and that we can, be in the company with others and be in real dialogue. That's why we call it the Campaign for Real Human Connection. We see this as a really big need in society overall. We see this as somewhere where if we can create a ripple from the Shaw, and if that can make its way that other organizations can pick up on that too, it's not just us who can achieve this. There's a movement in this about how we can all lean into the arts to enrich life and to, take away from a lot of the challenges that our technology and devices have taken us down a path that's just not good for society.
Cindy, what you say is just truly inspiring. Richard, you work with many Capital Campaign Pro clients, right? And you've been doing this for a long time. I wonder, as you think about the Shaw Festival and what you've learned from that, right? What you've seen with Shaw Festival, are there things that you would sort of hope and wish that all other campaigns would be able to do too? This is sort of a surprise question. I didn't warn you about this one, but what would you like to organizations to take from these lessons?
Well, first, Tim and TC really embraced this campaign as a campaign of discovery, right? They knew that the campaign now would be different from the campaign at the end. And as I think about, and it's still constantly evolving, as Cindy was mentioning, I think it's really important for everybody embarking on a campaign not to be overly wedded to their first ideas about it, but rather to be open to it morphing over time into something that's even better and even more, even richer. And I think that's what the Shaw campaign has really been all about. And what was particularly great about the Shaw campaign and everybody involved was that they were open to that. All of them were open to that, not just Tim and TC, but the volunteers. They had permission by Tim and TC to think expansively about that. And I remember a couple of months ago, one of the committee members said in the committee meeting, it's taken long. This has been a long time, but we're better for it. It was one of those wonderful moments where you heard it from the volunteer articulating exactly how we all felt, and everybody's heads went up and down, and they really appreciated that honesty. It was a great journey as a result of that openness.
Yeah, it's a wonderful big idea for everyone launching a campaign to think about. When organizations are going into a capital campaign, it often is a time of change in an organization. And rather than being intimidated by that and trying to be rigid about it, the idea of opening your arms and embracing whatever that change is going to take, I think, is a wonderful reminder. So, this has been a wonderful conversation. It is inspiring to hear what you've done with this campaign, both of you. And I'm just thrilled to be able to take it to everybody listening to this podcast. Let me just close by asking each one of you just for one final thought about one thing that's really inspired you, or one thing that you would leave with our listeners.
Obviously, campaigns take longer than you ever think they will take. So whatever you think it's going to be, double it easily. At least that's been our experience. So patience is important. But I would say almost even more than patience is it's the concept of the first who, then what, having the right people to go through the journey with, because there are a lot of hard moments that happen. And it's really interesting to see how every person who has been in our orbit around this, the volunteers, the leadership, Richard, John, others that we've been working with the whole way through, we all have our moments where we're in a moment of doubt. And you really need your fellow teammates to help you through those moments. We talk about the messiness of a campaign in the sense that the roadmap is not clear. In the rearview mirror, it looks obvious, but at the time, no way. There's no way it looks clear. So there were so many moments through this campaign that I really valued, not only the sage wisdom that Richard brought into the space, but also very much the calm in the storm, having people around you who can say, it's okay. And it's okay that it's not perfect. And it's okay that you don't know exactly how this is going to unfold. It's going to be okay. I immensely have valued having the right people in this room together, the right leadership, Colleen as our fundraising chair, just incredibly optimistic and a real champion. And just having all the right people around makes those hard moments it makes it worth it, and it makes it possible, because these are a long haul. These are a marathon. They are not a sprint.
Cindy, you just put out there the embodiment of All.Together.Now. Richard, what's one thing you would leave with our listeners?
Well, Cindy's example is so inspiring, it's hard to follow it. But I will say, let me get a little tactical, just intentionally. I think incorporating legacy into this campaign was absolutely the right thing to do. Providing our donors with an opportunity to give in ways that many of them had never thought was possible from a philanthropic perspective, I think really opened up all kinds of opportunity for us. And I love in particular the way in which Cindy has embraced with the donors the notion of a cash gift combined with legacy can provide them an opportunity to have a naming opportunity that they can't necessarily achieve with just cash, right? And that the naming opportunity becomes the cultivation of the stewardship of that gift over time, and it deepens their connection to Shaw to the point at which that legacy component gift matures, shall we say. So it was a really good strategic decision to do, and I think Shaw's better for it.
Thank you both so much for being with me today and sharing your wisdom and the stories of the Shaw Festival All.Together.Now campaign with our listeners. For those who want to go visit the Shaw Festival, what's the website? Cindy, I should have looked this up. Shawfestival.ca, is that right?
Close. Shawfest.com.
Shawfest.com. So take a look at shawfest.com. I think this may have inspired me to go up for a couple of days. And if you want more information about capital campaigns, of course, go to capitalcampaignpro.com. On the homepage, you will see a tab with resources, many of which are free, or you can sign up for a strategy session to find out what it would be like to work with your senior campaign advisor.
Thanks for joining Amy and Andrea for today's All About Capital Campaigns. To learn more about them and their work together, visit capitalcampaignpro.com, where you'll find all the help you'll need for your campaign. And please follow, rate, and review us on your favorite podcasting platform. Thank you.